So Colton, this weekend I haven't even had a minute to sit down, because I've been doing a lot of stuff that I've been meaning to do for a while. I was finally able to make it to the Royal Academy of Art to see Ai Wei Wei's exhibit. Outside the museum there was this cool granite lazy boy which looked so soft and real, but was completely made of stone. The idea that our desire for permanence comes at the expense of our comfort and practicality, I thought was an interesting way for him to open up his exhibit. As was this old BMW full of Lego bricks. Colton, Ai Wei Wei is a Chinese modern artist from Beijing whose work focuses a great deal on human rights, free speech, and China's place in the modern world. His art, which has been seen all over the world, has had him put in prison, put under house arrest, and gotten him into all kinds of trouble with the Chinese government. The art in the exhibit, I think I enjoyed his work with the Chinese vases the most. He purchased a whole bunch of Han Dynasty vases, pottery that is over 2,000 years old, and destroyed or disfigured them. Now, I'm not usually an advocate for vandalism, but the questions this exhibit posed about culture, history, and value are all ones that I think that we're struggling with in the modern world, and ones that are particularly relevant to China right now. What is our relationship to our past? And what is the worth of our past? As countries around the world modernize, their citizen standard of living raises. Health, education, and equality all increase. But sometimes this happens at the expense of precious history and culture that is lost or thrown aside. Inversely, sometimes the culture and history itself is so backwards that it is the very vehicle of oppression and must be destroyed before prosperity and equality can be achieved. But really, one of the biggest forms of oppression was that these delicious-looking macaroons were almost 2 pounds each. And then, after getting some moderately suggestive frozen yogurt, I headed downtown for Guy Fawkes Day. As you know, on November 5th, 1605, Guy Fawkes was part of a conspiracy to assassinate King James I by blowing up the Houses of Parliament with King James inside. Now, to be honest, I've never really been sure what we're actually celebrating on Guy Fawkes Day. It could be the fact that we're happy that the plot failed, or we could just be celebrating like the general rebelliousness of the whole thing. Yeah, I don't really know. But turns out the Houses of Parliament and Trafalgar Square were covered in protesters wearing V for Vendetta style Guy Fawkes masks. I wasn't sure what exactly was being protested because I only saw one sign. It said, "Defend your right to protest." As if they didn't really have anything to be that upset about, but it was Guy Fawkes Day after all, so why not just protest to make sure we still can, just in case? The right to peacefully assemble and protest is one of the greatest successes of civilization. However, compared to the artist Ai Wei Wei, who had actually been thrown in prison by his government for his opinions, I found these protests pretty ironic. Later we traveled to the National Holocaust Museum, which was sobering to say the least. The museum covered the life of Jewish people all across Europe, from before the Nazi rise to power until after the war ended. Its focus on people and their stories had a humanizing effect that allowed me to view this tragedy as more than just statistics, but as people. The weekend came to an end with Remembrance Sunday. The city was covered in parades and poppies, all with the goal of, well, helping us to remember. Remembering all of those who had given their lives in the countless battles of the last century. Of all the things that I've learned this week, I've learned how tragically easy it is for mankind to be hateful to each other. Colton, our lives have been incredibly sheltered. For our whole lives, we have been free from famine and armed conflict, and have never really been touched by true tragedy. And while it is so easy for mankind to be hateful to each other, I feel that it is easier still for us to be indifferent towards each other, to tragically pass over and forget the suffering of others. With all these thoughts from Ai Wei Wei, to the Holocaust Museum, from Guy Fawkes, to the World Wars, I couldn't shake from my mind something that the head of the Holocaust Museum had told us. He said that as people leave the museum, they often tell him that they feel the need to do something, that they don't know what they can do, so they ask him for advice. He says that he always tells them that his only hope is that they do something positive, that they do anything positive.